Mozilla's Internet Health Report, which was released in 2017 and is being released in 2018 in just a few weeks. We use that as a framework for how we create a healthy internet. And then we also use BetaNYC's roadmap as an advocacy tool for how do we use that on the ground. And then we use tons of organizations who are literally doing the work to create a healthy internet locally. So it's a combination of all of those types of things. So today we're here to just kind of talk through the different initiatives and organizations, come up with some collaboration ideas, as well as some sort of understanding of where are the issues and opportunities that lie here. And to do that, we have our three wonderful panelists joining us today. So what I'm going to do is our panelists are going to talk about themselves, their organization, and their work, and then answer a few questions. And then what we'll ask is just if anyone else has any questions in the room. And then we're going to break up into smaller groups because we're a little bit of a bigger group. So to have a great discussion, to engage everyone, I'd love to just get us into smaller teams where we can dive even further into the issues and opportunities. Sounds good? Everyone's with me? Thank you for the thumbs up in the back. All right, so panelists, I'm going to start right here on my left. If you can introduce your name, tell us about your organization, and the project that you're bringing to this panel today.
My name is McDermott. I'm a fellow with the Mozilla Foundation. We are a charitable nonprofit, which means that a lot of the work that we do on the ground is actually seeding collaborations and catalyzing work that's already in play, very much in line with the mission of the organization, which is to support, sustain, fight for, advocate, ensure a healthy internet. And that's in some ways code. Healthy internet to what end is still part of the conversation. Healthy internet for who? You ask about marginalization. So healthy internet is in some ways a way to talk about conditions and qualities for what is a healthy society, healthy government, healthy community. And the other panelists are going to talk very directly to that. So what I wanted to do here is just share a little bit about the Internet Health Framework as we're using it and its value potentially to supporting work that you're doing. So if you think about Internet health as being some of the qualities that Amir already shared, there are 5 issue areas for us. Web literacy, what are the skills, capacities, habits of minds, understanding of certainly the way the web works, but also its power and potential for you as an individual or community to make change where you need it. Decentralization, so simplest ways to think of it as anti-monopoly, distributed. And that could be knowledge as much as it's also about resource and infrastructure. Digital inclusion, which we're starting to move towards digital equity, which I think are actually different kinds of things, but for right now, Mozilla talks about bringing people in. So inclusion. We have open innovation, 2 of the most overused vague words ever. When you put them together, it multiplies. But for us, I think what that means is, if you think of these qualities or these issue areas being interrelated, open innovation is about changing opportunity, access, changing ways people work and collaborate together, the way that they build knowledge, and the way that then that knowledge is instrumental. So I'm going to leave it at that. Last one is digital privacy and security, which is a major focus for us over the last year and moving forward. So when you look at these issue areas and you think about their interdependencies and their intersection, they become useful metrics or baseline categories for cities, for communities, for activists, for policy folks, to start thinking through, well, how do we know any one of these things are happening? What's happening in a city that might be reflective of that? So one collaboration that we have right now with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs is to provide focused cybersecurity, digital security trainings for immigrant serving organizations because they're particularly under attack right now. And so along with dealing with all kinds of issues related to safety and security for communities, they now have the added issue of surveillance and tracking, doxing, spoofing, hacking. So what does it mean to actually have digital security as a form of support for your community? What does it mean to be a steward of public data, right? If you're collecting on behalf of a community. So that to me is one of those intersectional projects that represents a moment inside the framework that says if cities are investing in this kind of work, what does it look like? What does it mean? Does it help us move forward a conversation that supports a healthy web in service to a healthy city? So I overdid my time. I'm going to hand it over to the beta folks, but I want you to hold that because the report is in fact a place to start documenting your work. It itself is not a policy instrument, it's a research instrument. So if you're doing work that you want to see reflected at the city level inside an internet health framework, that's something that we can support and engage with.
I have my own. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Renee, and I am an organizer at BetaNYC. Thank you so much for coming to our conference today. And I am one of the project leads on the update to the People's Roadmap to a Digital New York City. In 2013, we partnered with the city and led workshops in all 5 boroughs and had online discussions and collaboratively wrote what is known as the People's Roadmap. This is a policy document that comes from the community. And in 2013, this is the first time we ever did it. So the civic tech community, I think, was a lot different back then than it is today. And there were a lot of great ideas that were synthesized and into 5 topic areas. And each topic area presented several proposals. So the 2013 document had 34 proposals, and the document was pretty much written for, government agencies to look at, private sector, nonprofits, to sort of get some guidance and some inspiration on how they can build digital products and programs that can really benefit New Yorkers. So now we're in 2018, and it's time for us to update it. And goodness, things have really changed. Last year we were like, okay, let's update this document in preparation for the new administration, right? Yes, we have still de Blasio, but we have a new city council. So we have a new 4 years to shape, digital policy in New York City. And we quickly found out that, oh my gosh, this is not just a 3-month project. This is actually a never-ending project, because I think community visioning documents are incredibly important, and they can't just be static. They have to be living and breathing, and they have to be able to respond to the changes in our environment. So that's where BetaNYC is right now. We're kind of at the forefront. We've begun to do public outreach through workshops. We're doing our borough tour again. And we're working right now with Mozilla through the Open Leaders program to develop a online engagement platform and a collaborative writing process so that we can expand the net, so to speak. In 2013, yes, there was a community that wrote this, but it was relatively small. And in the 2018 update, we want to make it bigger. And really, this is just an issue, civic tech, anything that intersects with this is an issue for all New Yorkers. So every update, we're going to get better. So we look at the Internet Health Report as, really just like a very important guidepost, right? It has really influenced us in some of the issues that we need to bring up in our workshops and our engagement. Security and privacy being the biggest one, right? I think in 2013, we were thinking about it a little less than we are today. Started thinking about the trade-offs, when we talk about, free internet, and, oh, great, I have access to high-speed internet, but what am I giving in exchange? So really just elevating the conversation and trying to demystify this complicated subject matter. So that is where we are a local sort of application, I think, of the Internet Health Report, and very, very thankful to have Mozilla here to guide us in a way.
Hello. Hey. Good morning. Anyone? All right. So my name is Teresa Basilio. I am the Deputy Director of Resilient Communities Initiative at the New America Foundation. And I'm here to represent our Resilient Networks NYC project. And that project, so first I'm going to try to kind of let you know what it is, and then I'll tell you why we did it. So what it is we are co-designing and building wireless networks, community wireless networks with 5 communities here in New York City. These communities are flood-prone communities. They're frontline communities in the climate change, and are also folks who are working on a variety of different kinds of issues, racial and economic justice issues in their communities. So we are currently in the process, we just finished the design phase and are heading into construction this spring. The communities are, I want to give them a shout out. So we're working in the Bronx with The Point, which is in the Hunts Point community. We are also working in Manhattan, in East Harlem with Silicon Harlem, in Brooklyn with Sheepshead Bay community at Kings Bay Y. So we have, if I didn't make it clear, we have actual host community organizations in each neighborhood. And also in Gowanus, the Fifth Avenue Committee. And then in Queens, we're working with the Rockaway Development Corporation, right, and Revitalization Corporation, RDRC, in Far Rockaway. And so we have been in this process with them because we recognize that technology is not just about the tools, but it's really about relationships. And so for us, it's about how do we leverage technology to be something that's contributing to larger issues of racial and economic justice. So we see ourselves in an intersection with environmental justice issues, racial and economic justice issues. And so to make that happen, we follow 4 specific principles, I guess. One is equal access. So that's kind of an obvious one. But equal access in and of itself is not enough. We also are about making sure that there's active participation from historically marginalized communities. And that should be also kind of obvious, but sometimes that isn't, so it's good to say. Part of that also is common ownership, right? Like who owns the infrastructure, not just who owns, different aspects of the internet. I think we need to be talking about actual physical infrastructure as well. So for us, these networks are community networks in that the communities themselves are owning, running, and maintaining them. And we're training digital stewards, I didn't mention that, but we're training digital stewards, which are community residents, to actually learn how to do that. And then the last one is fostering healthy relationships, because for us, this is, again, like I said, not just about the technology, but the relationships that contribute to resiliency, contribute to people's ability to organize and have, healthy, vibrant communities. And so those are the 4 kind of basic principles, but I wanted to make sure to just highlight, nobody does this in isolation. So there's some other principles that we also base ourselves on, and it's in collaboration with folks in Detroit who are also building out these similar networks. So I want to shout out the Detroit Community Technology Project. They're also working on this. It's a little bit of a different project in that they're doing it in homes, and we're actually building these in small businesses. But the principles are the same, and so I highly recommend you checking those out. They have digital justice principles online, as well as there's now equitable internet initiative principles, working principles, that the communities themselves there, I think it's 4 neighborhoods in Detroit who are working on building these community networks. And I also want to make sure to give another shout out to Red Hook Initiative, Debria, who's in the room, who is really the first of these community networks that's actually was functioning during Hurricane Sandy. And so ours, we hope to get, in the same success as RHI. So definitely, yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Great. So thank you, Megan, Teresa, and Lauren for being here and for sharing all that. I have a few questions, and I'm hoping we can dig in. Megan, if it makes sense, yes, that'd be great. Thank you. So I'm just going to start. I know each one of you went through tons of different layers and connections that are in there.
Yeah, it was hard to do that.
There was a lot. And I think some of a couple of you have already touched on this, but I really want to dig deep. Why is each layer so important? How do all these layers connect with each other? How do these layers ensure that we reach even the most marginalized of communities and the people everywhere in New York? And how do we foster the health of the internet through these different layers?
I'll go. So our project, we thought through it as like a multi-stakeholder process, because because I mean, that is how we're going to be able to really access and have like long-term sustainability of these networks. It can't just be like one group or one stakeholder. Like, we really need to be having conversations across an entire community. And so that's why we had an anchor community based organization, and then they're training digital stewards, which depends on the community. For some folks that's intergenerational, for some it's young people, depending on who the folks are in the community who are interested and invested in doing that kind of work. We also working with small businesses, because it's part of the Rise NYC project, which is really about how do we foster small businesses, understanding that climate change is real and happening, and we're going to need to be also protecting our small businesses, and that they're also a vital part of the community. So it's the small businesses, and then we also have tech partners as well who are supporting in some of the tech implementation and training our stewards in some of the specificity of installing these networks, which I'm learning a lot about myself. And then there's also a larger community working around climate change issues and environmental and racial justice that we also need to be in conversation with. So for those communities, there's a range of issues, right, that are impacting people's ability to be, not just to be online, but to be able to access all sorts of services, to be able to organize. So we need to be in conversation about what the challenges are locally. So I will give an example of Silicon Harlem. They're working with COADs, which are groups who are working around resiliency and resiliency and getting ready for the next climate emergency, right? And so they have been doing all sorts of trainings on what do you need to prepare for, what kinds of not just in technology, like everything, right? Like, what are the ways in which we need to be thinking about this? And so they're also partnering and having conversations with these groups that have already been organizing and thinking through these things, because again, we don't want to be in isolation. We don't want to start from scratch. There's a lot of work already happening in these communities, and the more coordinated we are, the stronger it'll be, and the stronger the relationships are, the stronger the networks will be.
So one of the big components of the People's Roadmap Project is really showcasing the civic tech or community tech really ecosystem in New York City. And, so we got our decision makers, and I think we all kind of know who those are. And then we got the players, right? Some of them maybe, the nonprofits, the, community organizations, the, private sector that, will have some influence or, we'll partner with them. And then we have the community that's here today, right? Who's fairly, maybe there's some, sort of newcomers to the space, but, fairly familiar with some of the issues that, we're all sort of working to tackle. But I think the most exciting part are the folks who are just being exposed to community tech for the first time. And we had a workshop at the College of Staten Island last week where we had the privilege of working with many students who were there just for credit and had no idea why they were there. What is this? What tech? What? And about 30 minutes later, we have them sitting at a table sort of just talking about, their experience, their relationships to technology through their education. One of our topic areas is education and lifelong learning. Obviously, working with students to sort of understand, how that topic area impacts their lives is, very relevant. But, it really just proved to us that this is truly a subject matter for everyone. I mean, it touches everyone's life. And a lot of, this project is sort of recruiting more passionate people, a lot of sort of convincing people or exposing people. And I hate to use the word education because it's not like, oh, I'm teaching you something or whatever. Like someone who's educating this versus not educating this. No, I don't really like that that terminology, but really just, sort of joining forces. And, really this is, the community tech space is, it's a language, it's a lexicon in which is a framework in which we tackle issues and just bringing new people on to this team. So I hope that addresses this issue of layers because there's a lot of them. And it's sometimes hard to get us all on the same page.
Away Hi. The one thing I would want you to take away from the three conversations, the three things that we've shared with you is very simply that you have an opportunity, I think, in your time today to think about what is a metric, what is a project, what is a collaboration that you are addressing in your work that you want to see lifted up, and can documentation through something like an internet health framework be useful to you? But more importantly, how can the recommendations, the solutions, the contributions you want to make to your work also be part of the People's Roadmap, very much as an advocacy? So we've got documentation and advocacy, and exactly that, the example that Teresa shared is, I think, the core of the work that we're hoping to see evolve in a healthy digital city, right? In the sense that it's multi-stakeholder, it's community-driven, it's community-responsive, it's community-led. So what infrastructure is needed, what investment is needed, what kinds of collaborations need to be advocated for, what need to get resourced, and how. So just to put a real fine point on it, maybe it was a hammer, but I would hope that that is useful to you in the conversations that you have next.
Great, thank you all. And just one more quick question. I just want to address, what are the issues and the gaps that currently exist in the layers that we've identified and the different types of work, and as we move forward to creating this amazing vision that you've all illustrated? So what are the issues? What are things we can talk about as a group and really dig into together? And where do we need more collaboration and more people working together on different stuff?
I'll go first. I really see one of the big gaps is people to help facilitate these conversations. It's something that we recognized pretty early on with the People's Roadmap update, that it can't just be a centralized team of folks who are working on this. Yes, we want to get an update to the document out that has some updated proposals so we can, as an organization, and that does our own work, and also we advocate for laws, etc. We need to definitely set our agenda, but going forward, we need to have people facilitating this type of community engagement around these issues all the time. So, and I think a lot of our work, with Mozilla coming up in the next few months, is to sort of figure out what is the framework where we can set up a process that can replicate itself. So it's really, truly in every corner of the city.
I think there's so many issues, so I don't want to be like negative Nancy over here. But I will say on the national stage, we have the repeal of net neutrality, and I think people have already mentioned this, but we have a lot of an FCC chairman who is not friendly to community control, let's just put it that way, and a larger administration who's not for that. So there's that. I think there's also, locally, I think one thing that's come up for our partners is kind of bridging the tech community and community organizing, community development communities, and an understanding that we need to be very conscious about relationships of power, and how folks work together and develop trust and relationships that are truly based on equity and mutual respect. So that's an ongoing issue, and one that we're hopeful about, being based here in New York City, where there's so many resources and folks working really deeply to interrogate those relationships. So I want to kind of turn that one around. And then a third one is long-term sustainability of this work. So making sure that folks understand that this stuff requires long-term commitments, capacity building, a commitment that's long-term as opposed to, y'all got this, right? So really committing to a long-term process of sustaining this work.
All right. Thank you, three. That was great. A layout for sort of the vision we want to create in the city and how we're getting there. And so what we would love to do right now is actually split everyone up into 3 different groups so that we can actually dig deeper into groups of the work that some of you are doing. What are you interested in learning more about this, and how do we see opportunities and kind of address some of the issues that were identified here, as well as maybe unpack some other issues. So what we're going to do is actually split up our 3 wonderful panelists into 3 different groups, and then magically just hope that we even out everyone here in this room. I know it's small, so actually collaborating and putting people into groups is going to be a little bit of an issue, but I'm really hoping this will work, and we'll come out with 3 distributed groups, and that we will actually be able to dig deeper. And then what we're going to do is kind of have just a share back at the end, a quick few-minute report back from each group as to quick highlights that were coming, and just sort of next steps. All right, so. Okay, I'm really gonna try and get everyone together now. Do you have someone from your group who wants to do a quick share out? If you are able to speak, I'd love for you to come here so I can give you the mic and then be within a greater view of the room. Share out.
Okay, so I was with Megan's group talking about the Internet Health Report from the Mozilla Foundation. And we ended with a lot of open questions, I think, because everybody went around the room and there's really great experience there, a lot of very interested and varied interest in things like vulnerable populations, in things like social justice, democracy. And we're going to have to keep talking. And one of the things that I kind of like is that we're right before lunch, so we can keep talking if we want to keep talking. I don't know if there's anything else anybody wants to add. Okay.
Thank you. Is there someone from this group that's able to do a share out? Yes, perfect. Thank you.
So we're the People's Roadmap group, and our particular group was really focused on discussing how we can advance the infrastructure around open data a lot better, because there's a lot of open questions still. Sure, we have open data sets on our open data portals, but who is somebody that I can go to if I have an issue with this data set? How can I be certain that is something I can rely upon? There are so many data sets, how do I even navigate it? There's a lot of questions that we had that we thought would be useful to be put into a roadmap regarding navigation, transparency, accountability, and generally like the friendliness, but also what types of data that are out there. So we discussed that. Just to put a random plug in, I'm trying to solve this problem myself, and I'm calling it the grid, and I'm holding that session at 3 p.m. and 4 p.m., 3:15 and 4 p.m. Yeah.
Thank you. And someone over here who's doing the share out? Oh, great. All right.
So we were talking about the Resilient Networks project, and we were talking about, I guess, what resiliency means, and in terms of it meaning both the ability to survive in the case of an outage or a storm, and also how that survives by building community relationships. So it's not enough just to be able to survive the storm. It's people have to know how to use it and know how to sustain it. So we talked about digital deserts and those types of trainings, and we talked about why the infrastructure right now is being put in small businesses, why that's the case right now. We talked about different cohorts that are doing similar projects. There's projects in the South, in Tennessee, to provide municipal broadband. There's Detroit. There's a project in Detroit that they collaborate closely with. We talked a little bit about NYC Mesh, which is a similar but less community. It's a different approach to building these networks. We talked about the Red Hook initiative and their the way that their network survived through Sandy. Is there anything I missed? Or anything else?
Do you want? Yeah, I'm gonna pass you the mic.
I think that basically covered it, right? Yeah, it was really good.
I love the support. All right, thank you, everyone. Those are great shares out. 20 minutes is not enough time for that type of conversation. So I appreciate you all starting to dig into it, and I know that there's a lot more work that needs to be done here and a lot more discussion and collaboration that needs to happen. So I love how it was put that we do have the rest of the day, and we have lunch coming up right now to continue that. So there's lots of opportunities. I know the roadmap is right outside this room for the rest of the day, where you can engage and talk more on that sort of work. And then I did hear the rumorings of the digital equity lab that's happening on March 20th. Where we'll be digging in further. A couple of us will be there, and we'll be digging in further onto, how do we really ensure the equity through this type of work across the city. If you're looking to hear about more information about that, just let us know or let myself know, and I'm happy to share it. And otherwise, I just want to thank Teresa, Lauren, and Megan for joining us today and really providing some great conversation starters. So thank you, and thank you all for joining us as well, and enjoy lunch. Bye, everyone.